Squeeze over. So this is Kurt Polish with the Madison ModPo group. Today we are going to be looking at a poem by Eileen Myles called The Honey Bear. To my right we have Scott, Lou, Roger, and Jim. And I am going to lead discussion. Fickled Finger of Fate has arrived. And I will, it points to me, so here we go. Eileen Myles, The Honey Bear. Billie Holiday was on the radio. I was standing in the kitchen, smoking my cigarette of this pack I plan to finish tonight. Last night of smoking youth. I made a cup of this funny kind of tea I've been hanging around. A little too sweet, an odd mix. My only impulse was to make it sweeter. Ivy Anderson was singing pretty late tonight. In my very bright kitchen, I'm standing by the tub, feeling a little older, nearly 30, in my very bright kitchen tonight. I'm not a bad-looking woman, I suppose. Oh, it's very quiet in my kitchen tonight. I'm squeezing this plastic honey bear, a noodle of honey dripping into the old sweet tea, to the odd sweet tea. It's pretty late. Honey bear's cover was loose, and somehow honey dripping down the bear's face, catching in the crevices beneath the bear's eyes. Oh, very sad and sweet. I'm standing in my kitchen. Oh, honey, I'm staring at the honey bear's face. So, Eileen Myles has been described as perhaps third generation New York poet, if there could be such a thing. Definitely influenced by the New York school. This particular poem is an early one of her works. It appeared in a collection from 1981, A Fresh Young Voice from the Plains. This is Eileen Myles' moment in the sun. She is become a personality known to the media. She is, for instance, a consultant on the HBO show Transparent, and one of the characters in that show is and looks like Eileen Myles. And apparently Eileen has even appeared on the show and did have an affair with the show's producer at some point, but which ended quickly. So I've learned a fair amount of gossip in all of this.
Could you expand on that gossip, please?
Yeah, well, sure, it's, but this level of prominence is not often achieved by a poet in today's culture. So why don't we just take a look at the poem, and one of the things that stuck out for me was the use of repetition in the poem. And maybe you guys can help me with that. We have two jazz singers, Billie Holiday and Ivy Anderson was, do you know who she is?
1930s jazz singer.
Right.
It don't mean a
She
thing.
sang with the Duke.
Duke Ellington.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then there's lots of references to her kitchen.
She was also a model. She made money with her body modeling.
Ivy Anderson.
She was that pretty, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we have standing in the kitchen, in my very bright kitchen, my bright kitchen tonight, in my kitchen tonight, and then once we get down to Honey Bear, lots of reference to Honey Bear, honey, Honey Bear's cover, honey, bear's face, bear's eyes, honey, honey bear. And there's also a reference to how late it is, how sweet the tea is. That appears in at least 3 places. And always this issue of aging, being on the threshold of turning 30, so that it gives, and also her sense of aloneness as well.
Last night of smoking youth.
Yep. So, you have this repetition, which I think helps the poem hang together. And I guess I'd be interested in first reactions before we talk a little bit about the New York school.
I was just wondering if tea and honey are actually tea and honey, or if they stand for something larger than that. That it's, does that make any sense?
If they're symbolic of something.
Or something, oh, yes. That she says she's making tea, but is that her, and I'm just off the top of my head, but is making tea, making a poem, and the honey is the flavoring of the poem. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
That those
it
two
does.
things
It
are
would
symbolic,
help
or-
explain that. My only impulse was to make it sweeter,
Yeah,
almost like a artifice
mm-hmm.
of the moment.
Oh, very sad and sweet.
Yeah. Well, and that poetic O, which you only see, as far as I know, only in poetry, the not OH, but just simply O.
I took this poem to be, again, I'm really new to this stuff, but the kind of, what do you call it, I woke up, I did this, I went through the day, and these are the things I did in the day. Well, this is the evening, and these are the things that I did, ordinary things that I did in the evening,
Yeah.
building up to the very last line, which is just devastating, I think.
Do you want to explain in what way? Because I think I'm with you on that, but it'd be helpful to articulate it.
Well, first she sets the scene. She's in her own kitchen alone. She's not young, but she's not old yet. And she was listening to two of the iconic women blues singers of any age, actually. So it's, you're getting the feeling that she's blue and she's sad. And then the honey bear, you know what the honey bear is, we all probably have one in our kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
It's full of honey, and she squeezed it, but the honey came out and dripped down, and it made the bear cry.
Cry.
It made that bear cry, and she looked at it and she thought, oh my God, how sweet and sad. And then the two words, oh, honey, that's her lover.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, honey.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on something that just brings us pretty close to a discussion of the New York school. I drew together some items discussed in David Lehman's book, The Last Avant-Garde, some of the things Al talked about in his ModPo introduction to the New York school. Found something on a website called Student Writing Center, and then the use of the Poet's Glossary by Edward Hirsch, which is a wonderful book. It's a dictionary of poetry, so if you guys ever see it, grab it. So politics not a theme, lack of punctuation. Well, we could do these one at a time. So this is not political. Second, lack of punctuation.
But there is punctuation in this. The sentences make sense.
They,
Periods in the beginning and the end.
but no commas, no dashes,
No,
no semicolons,
simple.
no quotation marks. So, yeah, she does use sentences, she does use periods to mark the end of a sentence, but
That's it.
that's it. Ease of shift from dialogue to narration. What do you guys think? There's not a lot of narration going on here, but maybe at the end when she's addressing the honey bear. Oh, honey. And if that's the case, it's a shift that's pretty easy. All of a sudden, you know, it's not set off with quotation marks. Well, let's do a few more of these. Logic by association. And why don't we let that one? Charm, yes. There's a certain charm to focusing on this honey bear. Speed. Eileen Myles is known for her short lines in her poetry. And she was asked about that once. Why do you prefer the short lines? And she just flat out said the speed. Intensity certainly is an emotional moment for her, for lowness. A flair for comedy, I'm not so sure about that in this instance. Use of language as it is spoken rather than more literary argot, meaning she uses the vernacular, and I think that's very much on display. Emphasizes imagination over experience. She's having an imagined conversation with this honey bear, or at least as if she is talking to the honey bear. Steeped in facts, events, and objects of everyday life. Okay, I think we can check that box.
Isn't she talking to herself mostly?
Well,
Yeah.
that's the other question I have is who is this? Either she's projecting herself onto this honey bear, or in the absence of having a relationship at that moment, she is alone. The only quote person she has to talk to is the honey bear. Let's just play with, and I'll talk.
In that respect, the
Yeah.
line, and I'm pretty good, still pretty good looking woman.
Mm-hmm.
She's self-reflecting
Mm-hmm.
without question in this poem, and the whole thing is aimed at a self-reflection. And then she uses the honey bear as a metaphor for being sad and crying, and then at the very end she just blows the whole thing and says, she's thinking about her lover. This whole thing reflects on her thoughts about her lover.
Mhm.
That she's lost her, or she's very sad about the affair, whatever it is.
Or maybe the person doesn't even exist. But
Right.
It's part of her imagination.
Because the only thing she has is this personified honey bear.
Right.
Another one of those tropes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she has a cigarette. She has a cup of tea, and
I keep going back to the Billie Holiday to start the whole thing off.
she has
And
Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday had a very sweet sound that belied the irony of what she was actually singing. I think, as a prime example, Strange Fruit
Oh, yeah.
has a sweetness that is so horrible and sad, and that that Eileen is the honey bear.
You mean she's projecting herself onto the honey
Yes,
bear?
right.
Because the honey bear's sad.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet and sad.
Sweet and sad.
Yeah.
Well, you can't think of anybody more personification of blue than Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
Her whole life was was very blue.
Referring back to Billie Holiday.
Right. So that, you're right, it sets the tone for this whole scene, that she's listening to Billie Holiday.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then she brings in another very pathetic figure, and that's Ivy Anderson, who had, a lot of difficult love relationships and tough time in those days in the Duke Ellington band, and died young, probably of abuse of herself, probably, since that was going on a lot in those days.
Substance abuse, drinking, drugs.
Drinking and drugs both.
Then there was Billy Strayhorn.
Mm.
And she might have had a venereal disease, it's just, she had a very short, she was beautiful, she had a short, sad life.
Well, so the power of those two references, a short life and a poem in which she's reflecting about her age, that's a very powerful reference.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of aging that went on for her by 30 is phenomenal.
Right.
Almost like the dark eyes of the child in the first poem.
Mm.
Which
The age.
The About Eyes
Yeah.
poem,
Yeah.
Edwin Rolfe. So that's about it for me. Alp also talks about the New York School in terms of its use of non-narrative, for lack of a better word. How things don't happen necessarily in a sequence of cause and effect in these poems. Sometimes they can be satirical of narrative, or there's sort of a feel of alternative narrative, exemplified by Frank O'Hara's The Day Lady Died. Again, no cause and effect, just I'm wandering around on my lunch hour, and this is what I'm putting in the poem. And it sort of has that feel here, I think, with the honey bear. There's not a lot that happens on this poem. It's just, here we are with this everyday object, using everyday speech, and writing a powerful poem.
And it's about a very common human event, and that is love and,
Not
good or
love.
bad consequences of being in love. Oh, honey.
Yeah.
I'm right now playing with learning the blues on the piano.
Mm.
And to me, this poem is a blues. The whole thing is a beautiful blues.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so interesting. By the way, I forgot to mention that Eileen Myles did run for president in 1992. She took it semi-seriously. I just visited some 20-plus states, and I have a poster or a flyer, a copy of it from when she was doing her during her candidacy. Among other things, she called for abolishing the income tax, instead for the taxation of assets, reduce defense spending, pay our UN dues. I'm sorry, the writing's really small here. So you get a feel for what it was. It's at the bottom. She also talks about the use of vernacular language as the place where everything meets. She really wants to be grounded in the everyday. And
I like the internal consistency of this poem because she sets a scene and she's very consistent about sticking with this theme or this scene, and then she builds up to the real, the unordinary climax of her sadness over her, whatever the love affair is, or the missing of her lover, or whatever that old honey could mean a lot of things, which is also neat, but it's still consistent back with what she was building up.
yeah, I think that comes through her use of the repetition that we were
Yeah.
describing.
Standing in the kitchen, standing in my kitchen.
Yeah.
Really pull it together.
And it's very believable. This scene, you can see it, you can enter it. It's it's humanly very believable,
Mm-hmm.
simple and believable.
Mm-hmm. What is the tub?
It's what a sink was in those.
That's what you called it?
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, I have it.
It wasn't
An
a
old-fashioned
it
kitchen.
wasn't a tub in the kitchen, like
In
that.
my kitchen, it's a tub. You
Okay.
could literally get into it,
Okay.
but it's what you wash the dishes in.
All right.
Not like most
All
these
right.
modern kitchens where you
Okay.
have a small or a double thing
Right.
that you put your dishes in.
Yeah.
This is a real tub. You could easily bathe a small child in a
Okay.
kitchen tub.
All right.
Well, I remember having plastic tubs that would be in the kitchen sink, that you would have the dishwater in, or the, have
Have
the,
two different things.
right.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Instead of a double sink, you used to have a tub of some sort
Mm-hmm.
to rinse your dishes in.
That's it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Good poems, all three.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of help from Al and steered us in the right direction.
Well, that's what he does, and he does it so well.
Yeah.